back in February, Killian Scott from Love Hate and John Bradley from Game of Thrones were starring in the film Traitors. I loved catching up with these two. They gave me such an insight into the movie business and them as human beings.
Killian and John, great to be in your company.
Hi, how's it going?
I was just saying, we're at the end of a very, very long press day. How do you guys keep your wits about you, and how do you manage to be stringing a sentence together this late in the day?
I'm not sure if I've actually said anything of any interest or relevance or meaning for quite some time now. I certainly feel like John has become more articulate as we've gone on. I've regressed to the point where, again, I don't know what I'm talking about. No, it's fine. To be honest, it's one of those things where it's a real pleasure to talk about the film. I mean, we shot it 2 years ago, and it was something I loved. I just loved making. A friend of mine said to me at the time, actually, if this film is nearly as good as how happy you are making it, it'll be great. And he was talking to me, and I was very happy doing the film and very happy to talk about it, you know.
Yeah, but I've been very lucky that I've never been forced to talk up a project that I'm not proud of. So all of these junkets I've done before are things that I want people to see because I'm very, very proud of them, and I think that they deserve to be plugged.
Yeah.
And so I could imagine it's slightly different if
you're doing something that you weren't that interested in.
If you've not got that much faith in the project, you had a bad time doing it and you don't think it's going to do any business, it must be quite hard to talk that up.
It is, yeah. I've had that experience.
So what do you do in that experience where you're going, no? I mean, when you signed on, you would have signed on because you would have liked the project, but your finished product wasn't what you thought.
Yeah, but the important thing to remember is that, you know, my individual value judgment of the piece should not be in any way relevant to my promotional duties, because, you know, it's not just my film, and there's a whole huge team of people. So I think even if you're disappointed with your own work in something, or if you're disappointed with the thing in its entirety, you still have to try and go to bat for it as much as you would have had you liked it.
Yeah.
And it just means that you phrase things slightly differently, or you try and emphasise the things that you're happy or positive about. But it's also safe to say that most actors' perception of their own work is often not that reliable, because you're so heavily involved in the thing. And I watch a film and I'm like, I remember what I was thinking while I was shooting that scene sometimes. Wow. So how am I supposed to be a valuable judge of whether it's good or it's bad? So I think a lot of times, you know, your own personal feelings of the project. I mean, it's lovely when you have something that you can really enthusiastically speak about, and Traitors is such a blessing because I'm so proud of it and I adore it as a film. But even when you don't, it's still important to try and say the best things you can, you know.
Yeah, I also think you have a duty to the person interviewing you as well.
Thank you. So many people forget that.
The fact that they have, 5 minutes sometimes, and you just have to give them a valuable 5 minutes. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you know, and it's the same with everybody you meet as an actor in the industry, you know, they have got the power to make you look really stupid if you get on the wrong side of them, or if you displease them in some way. So, you know, you have to give everybody the respect they deserve. Everybody should be allowed to do their job in the easiest possible manner.
You guys coming from, you know, love-hate background, Game of Thrones background, violence isn't something new to you, right? And neither are love scenes. Which do you find tougher to film, the violent scenes or the love scenes?
Generally, I'd find sort of scenes of violence, that kind of stuff, because I'm not very physically capable, like in trading type scenarios, fights and that kind of stuff. And I think I'm just a complete wuss as well in terms of being hurt or hurting someone else. And the romantic scenes are more, it's kind of like it's just like a normal acting in the sense that you put all your attention on the other person and you just make sure they're as comfortable as is possible. And it's always going to be a little awkward. But the funny thing about it is that it's just mechanical. It's very much, you know, there's nothing in any way sexy or romantic about those scenes. You know, it's just, you know, okay, the camera's going to be here and then you guys stand like, you know, and it's very much just going through a mechanical process.
I think the thing is, I would prefer to do fight scenes. I think because it's easier to imagine that you're fighting in character. But I think when you're doing a love scene, you feel like you're giving something of yourself away. It's just quite personal. You do feel that it's no matter how much of a character you're putting onto yourself, that you're laying onto yourself, there is something that still has to make it drawn from your own experiences.
I think as well, it's interesting, it's a slightly egotistical thing as well, to really commit. All good acting happens when you're completely relaxed and committed to a moment and unaware of everything else that's going on, as far as I'm concerned, and there's nothing going through your head, not even character motivations and all that stuff. And it's very, very difficult to commit authentically and entirely to a love scene for very vain and egotistical reasons, you know.
What are your parents like watching your work, like especially when there are some love scenes or there are violent scenes? Do they just not watch? Or
they're so supportive and lovely, and I mean, I've put them through the ringer, in fairness, with Love, Hate, Calvary, even 71. You know, I honestly have said to them for years, if I can get near something like Downton Abbey, I'll take it and run, just to give them something in return, because it feels like every piece of work I do is something they have to kind of suffer through. Because it's crap. No one wants to watch their kid or their brother or sister, you know, either beating someone to death, being beaten to death, or like, you know, in bed. You know what I mean?
how are yours?
Just in terms of the way they view my work generally, not in terms of controversial content, but just in general, they're a very hard audience to please. Not because they themselves are quite picky, but the fact that they'll catch you out with things.
Yeah.
They will say things like, when you did that in that scene, I know you do that in real life.
It's mental. I remember doing a scene. I remember my brother saying to me, there was a season of Love, Hate. He was like, "You were really uncomfortable shooting that scene and that scene, right?" And I those two scenes, we were in very public places, and I wasn't happy with how it was going or whatever, and they were just not pleasant days on set. And that was something he had seen that no one else would have picked up on at all. But it's also that thing of convincing them as well, because like a friend of mine, Steve, I remember him saying, he was like, you know, man, I support you to the end, but I'll never not see you.
Yeah.
And that's just fair, you know what I mean?
You've both been involved, right, in massive shows, Love, Hate, Game of Thrones. Does it ever get frustrating when people meet you, the first thing they want to talk about, I'm sure, are those two shows?
Well, do you know what? I'd rather them want to talk about that than want to talk about anything private. At least you know you're on safe ground then. At least it's something that you can both talk about. And it's a great way of, you know, somebody comes up and they're perfectly nice most of the time and they want to talk to you about stuff. You've already got something to talk about. Yeah. So you do find that it breaks a lot of barriers down in terms of starting conversations with people. It's got a nice playing field to start from.
Yeah, it's something I do think about a lot and have over the years. And I just think that fundamentally, if you can kind of keep a perspective, and ultimately to have been given a show like Thrones or Love, Hate for me, it's very much a great gift. And there's lots of wonderful actors, and I know them, and you know, they can't even maybe get an audition or something. And the only reason I got Love, Hate, or dare I say John got Thrones, or We Are Traitors, or any of these things, it's very much based in simple good fortune. It's not a meritocracy in that respect. So I feel like if you can just try and keep that perspective and try and have a sense of humour about it, it will just, you'll be so much better off as well. Because my experience of, if there have been a couple of times where the timing was off or the way someone approached me was not pleasant and I've said something or whatever, it only just makes things much, much worse. But of course, you know, like everyone, you have days where you don't want to talk to anyone in the world, or you don't want anyone to, whether you're an actor or not. And some days, obviously, it's a bit, it can be challenging, but by and large, it's a real gift and it's an honour. So you got to try and go with it.
I read once that the way Paul McCartney deals with it is the fact that when somebody comes up to him and starts talking about, you know, nice to meet, I'm a huge fan, he instantly picks up on something about them. So he'll say, "Oh, I really like your shoes. Where did you get your shoes from?" Because then he's taking an interest in them, and then they become equals. Then he strips away the pedestal that they put him on, and then it just becomes two people talking.
Which, at the end of the day, that's all we are. We just have different jobs.
Which is all that it is.
Yeah.
And it's that awkward disparity that exists that makes people uncomfortable. Whereas if you can bring it back to the same level, which is exactly as you say, is where it is, then it's a great way of going about it.
Well, guys, the door's been open twice, so I could talk to you all day. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
How fabulous were they? I love that these two very successful people are still very down to earth.